Hello, everyone. I want to start out with a disclaimer. If you came thinking we're going to talk about like Agile or Scrum or those kinds of sprints, sorry to disappoint you. But we're going to talk about a different kind of sprints. And when I wrote this talk, I didn't even know that Agile sprints were a thing. That's only in the last few months that I've learned about that. So here we go. What I am going to tell you about is tell you a story about sprint events, and particularly my experience with the PyCascade's 2019 sprints. And I want to convey a few things to you. Hopefully, I can show what are some of the virtues of sprints when done well, how they're kind of a unique opportunity for our community, and how they can lead to new projects that simply would not exist otherwise if we didn't have sprints. And we'll pause along the way to pick out some what I'm going to call summary lessons. And more specifically, I hope that there's something in this talk for some different audiences. So if you're a community leader or organizer of a conference or event, I hope you might learn why you might want to organize sprints for your event. And maybe some elements about sprints that can help build a welcoming, creative, productive kind of sprinting environment. And for folks who are newer to Python, I'm sure there are probably some in the room, maybe you're just getting started with Python. Sprints can be a really low risk chance to step out of your comfort zone, which is really awesome. And whatever your skill level, you have something to offer in a sprint environment. You may not believe me, but that is definitely the truth, and I can show you why. If you're more experienced with Python, sprints can be a great chance to explore one of your weird ideas. You all know that you have weird ideas. I always thought it would be handy if we had a tool that does this, or I always wish that this open source package had this functionality. Those kinds of ideas are great for sprints. And for experienced folks, how your experience can really help with aspects like project management, continuous integration, packaging, testing, documentation. That stuff is not trivial, and it can really lead and help build success in the long term for an open source kind of project. And that can come out of a sprint. So who am I? My name is Jacob Deppen. I live a bit of a double life these days. By day, I'm a data scientist with the CBRE Build Group. We're kind of a software group within CBRE, which is the largest commercial real estate company in the world. And by night, I'm finishing my PhD in archaeology at the University of Washington. So I'm based in Seattle. And how an archaeologist ended up learning Python and then working in commercial real estate is a whole different story for a different day. But the important thing to know is that neither of those lives involve anything to do with software engineering, software development. I have no training in any of that. But somehow, you're going to see that I ended up doing that. I'm a data person. I'm a data scientist. I work on the SciPy stack all the time, pandas, NumPy. That's where I live. So despite having no training in software development, this is the story of how I became a software developer in some sense, and how I'm kind of now the maintainer of an open source software package called pandas-vet. So I'm going to start at the end and talk about the software as it is in a more finished state. Finished, as we all know, software never is. And today, pandas-vet, it's a plugin for the Flake 8 code linter. And it adds something like 15 checks to Flake 8, to the standard Flake 8 checks. And it checks for kind of pandas best practices. And Flake 8 has a really great plugin setup. So the user can install Flake 8, install pandas-vet in the same environment. And then when you run Flake 8 on your code, all the pandas-vet checks are automatically included in your Flake 8 checks. It's pretty nifty. So here, a contrived code example. I have a script called drop column. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import pandas, create a data frame, and then drop a column from that data frame. Why you would do that, I don't know. But this code runs without error. It works. But if you use pandas a lot, and you kind of look through that, there might be a couple of things that raise red flags, maybe yellow flags. You're just kind of like, that's not really how I would have done it. And that's where a linter can really help out. So I can run Flake 8. Just run Flake 8 as you would normally run Flake 8 if you do that already in your workflow. And then from the command line, you can run it, incorporate it into your IDE, whatever. And it runs all those normal checks, and then it'll add the 15 pandas-vet checks as well. So it flagged 2 things, and these are 2 of our pandas-vet checks. First, even if you aren't a fan of import aliases, it's pretty standard to import pandas as PD, so we recommend that. And the linter has opinions, sorry, and those checks can be turned off if you want, if you disagree with our opinions. Second, we advise against using the in-place equals true parameter because it has some kind of inconsistent behavior across the pandas API, and it's just hard to predict, and it's kind of better to do something like this, where you assign it at the end to a variable. You can assign it to the same variable, whatever. This is just kind of a more predictable, better practice for writing pandas code. So that's what it does. So how does it work? So like all Flake 8 plugins, pandas-vet connects to the main Flake 8 application through Python entry points, which are specified in the setup.py file. The linter functions by traversing the code's abstract syntax tree, passing nodes to the AST, back to Flake 8 to be checked. Optional super strict checks can be enabled in pandas-vet's annoy flag on your CLI. And it's easily installable from PyPI and Conda Forge. And the project has PyTest test suite, continuous integration on Travis CI, contribution guidelines, a code of conduct, and a change log. It's kind of a full suite of everything. And so who cares? If any of that sounded like nonsense to you, that was kind of the point. It's a lot of different features. And I've been using Python in my research for something like 10 years. And until 9 months ago, I didn't know what an abstract syntax tree was. I didn't know what entry points were. I'd used Flake 8 connected to my IDE, but I had no idea that there were these plugins out there. And there's a whole ecosystem of Flake 8 plugins. I use Conda every single day of my working life. But I'd never put a package on Conda Forge before. I'd used PyTest a bit, never used continuous integration. And I'd certainly never done all the other things that go along with maintaining an open source software package, like changelog, managing pull requests, all of that kind of thing. And so the idea and the fact that I do understand, at least somewhat understand some of those things now, is pretty much completely a result of being in this environment, being in a community environment at Sprints where I had the chance to take those on and learn them and practice them in a kind of low-risk way. So there we are, Sprints. If you're not familiar with Sprints, let's talk a bit kind of generally. They bring together a group of people, usually people who don't know each other, to work on some kind of code projects. That's kind of the general gist. And they can take a lot of forms. You can maybe focus on a specific project or a specific problem. Some are about building new ideas. Some are a few days long. Some are just a single day. And it's really up to the organizers to set a format, a style, and a tone to how their sprints are going to operate. Most sprints are in general, most sprints are open-ended. And they kind of allow the attendees to make of the experience what they want. So you usually just show up with a laptop, an open mind, and maybe an idea of something you want to work on, and kind of figure out things from there. So PyCascades conference is very much like PyGotham. It's a community-run conference. It offers a different environment compared to the massive PyCon behemoth of a conference. And the 2019 edition was last February. The CFP is open now, I think, if people are interested. Come to PyCascades. And the sprints were the Monday after the conference over the weekend. So PyCascades was my first Python conference. I've been doing Python for a long time, but really getting into the community now. And during that conference, Anya Kapuscinska gave a talk called Lint Your Code Responsibly. And I really liked this talk, and it started my wheels turning. And I thought, maybe a pandas-focused linter would be a valuable resource for folks in the community. Because I've been thinking before the conference about pandas a lot, about teaching it, about learning it myself, and kind of the process that I'd gone through. And in the data science world, sometimes I hear, especially from students, complaints about the pandas API and how it's kind of tough to get started. It can be kind of sprawling. There's a lot there to deal with. And especially if folks have experience with the tidyverse in R, sometimes pandas seems a lot more daunting than a little more friendly syntax in the tidyverse. I'd made this website, a set of Pandas best practices flashcards compiled from a series of advice from around the web and from the Pandas docs and some other places. I call it Pandas in black and white. And so there's a kind of handy flashcards you can look at on the web if you're interested in kind of figuring out what might be a good way to approach pandas. And so in the hallway after this talk that Anya gave, I went up to her and I said, what do you think would be the best way to build a linter for pandas? She said, Flake 8 plugins are kind of the best way to get started in building something like this. So I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I kind of thought it was worth investigating. And that's where we come back again to sprints. I remembered at that point that I was signed up for these sprints on Monday, and this might be something that we could work on. Really, I had thought that I was going to go to the sprints and watch really experienced folks dive into really cool problems at a super high level, and these people had been programming in Python for years and years and years, and were really awesome, and I was just going to sit back and watch in amazement at folks. But over the 2 days of this conference, everyone in the community had been incredibly welcoming, incredibly friendly, incredibly supportive, and so much so that I felt like I could maybe take a chance, put myself out there, put my idea out there a little bit. So I kind of took a deep breath, and then I posted in PyCascades has a Slack. So I posted in the conference Slack, and I said, would anybody be interested in trying to build a pandas linter? And I waited. Well, I took a chance. That's our first lesson, right? Sprints are a venue for people to take chances. Your boss isn't there. The code you write at the sprints does not have to run in production. Maybe it will, and that's awesome, but take a chance. It's the place you can do something weird, do something new, and if it fails, you've learned something, right? Now here's the response I got. What? I got a response from a Python core developer, Mariata. And that was kind of really meaningful to me. The first response I got was from one of the Python core development team. So that was really cool and really kind of energizing and motivating. So lesson 2, your sprints are most welcoming when those that have power in the community kind of actively use this power for good. Right? Don't wait for the community to create the welcoming environment. If you have some sort of position, create it yourself. Mariata didn't have to reply to my message. She could have waited for somebody else. But that impact of that simple reply went kind of a little bit farther than the message itself. And Mariata, by the way, is one of the best in the Python community when it comes to welcoming new people into Python. For example, she and a group of other awesome people organized the first mentored sprints at PyCon this year. So it's a really cool, cool event that I hope continues. So I did get one person interested in building a pandas linter, a data scientist named Tim. And that was way more than the 0 that I thought I was going to hear back from. So I was really encouraged by one data scientist friend. So on Monday morning around 9:15 a.m., the sprints were supposed to start. And I found Tim at the venue. He and I were kind of wearing alarmingly similar shirts. And I think it's kind of like a Pacific Northwest data scientist uniform situation. But we sat down at a small table and started trying to figure out how we could build a Flake 8 plugin. And so we looked through some other Flake 8 plugins, and we figured out we needed to use this abstract syntax tree, and the Python standard library has an AST module for dealing with that. But neither of us had ever used it before in any real way, so we kind of started digging into the docs. And now the project has grown from just me to me and Tim. And as a data scientist, I do a lot of complicated mathematics, and I ran a 12-layer neural net and learned that that's a 100% increase in our team, and that was very important. So by 10:05, we gave our project a name, pandas-vet. I can't remember some of the other proposed names, but they were good, let me tell you. But get it, it's going to help you heal your pandas code, pandas-vet. So Tim got up to speed really quickly with working with the AST. Tim's a really super bright guy, which was very lucky for us because around that time we had a couple of other sprinters that were there. They kind of wanted to get involved, and they saw that we were building something interesting maybe, and they wanted to know how they might pitch in. So first we had Sam. And Sam works for an energy company in Oregon, and he had some experience with pandas, but not really much experience collaborating on open source projects on GitHub. And next was Charles. Charles is a very experienced engineer, but at that time, Charles was still learning Python and just getting started and had very little experience with GitHub, and especially with contributing to these kind of multi-user, multi-contributor GitHub projects. So with 4 people and a little bit of momentum, around 10:30, we graduated. We have our own Slack channel now. And soon we got a 5th person. Our new friend Walt dropped by our Slack channel and said, I'm interested in contributing. Where are you all sitting? This is kind of the way that sprints work. You can be very informal and fluid. So we had to find more space. So we had to move to accommodate all of our new folks. And Walt is a very experienced Python developer, but it was very clear that he was not a pandas user and didn't really know anything about pandas. But he wanted to help out. So at 10:30, we had 5 people working on our little project. Lesson 3, sprints can bring people together from wildly different skills, skill sets, skill backgrounds. Our group of 5 was a collection of data scientists, web devs, engineers, and we would have definitely never met each other or started working on a project together if it weren't for this kind of fluid, ad hoc sprint environment and what that cultivated. So each person started to put their particular expertise to work. Walt, this developer, worked on writing tests, and driving in as a test-driven development right away. Great job, Walt. And worked on some of the first tests that were going to check the things that Tim was building. At 11:15, we had our first substantive code in the GitHub repo. A commit from Walt that says, this builds, integrates with Flake 8, and runs. Doesn't do anything yet, but kind of our plugin is plugged in. So good start. Tim started building really the foundations of the linter code. He had picked up all this AST knowledge very quickly and was figuring out how to traverse it and find the things that we were interested in finding. So he committed the first check. Sam and Charles kept working side by side. They were translating my pandas flashcards into something that was more usable in a linter. Tried to create some rules. And I tried to chime in as I could to try to organize everything and work on creating more of the framework part of an open source project, because I kind of wanted this. It seemed like this was an idea that had a little bit of momentum, and I wanted it to keep going. So creating a README, how to contribute, writing a little background on the project, that sort of thing. So just after lunch, about 1:30 p.m., we had a working Flake 8 plugin. It would recommend that import pandas as PD if you just imported pandas, right? So that was the first check we saw earlier. And then at that point, we got another contributor. Somebody else who'd been at the sprints working on some other project. His name is Ali from Chicago. He's an organizer of the Chicago Python group. He kind of dropped by and said, can I help out in any way? And he pitched in and set up the CI for our project. And that was kind of Ali's contribution. He had to get on a flight to go home, but that's a huge contribution. And that's lesson 4. Sprint contributions don't have to be revolutionary. These small, quick contributions to project management, documentation, can be really huge for the long-term success and sustainability of a project. So now we had a blueprint for our checks. Sam and Charles were building more checks. At about 2 p.m., I dropped in the Slack channel that we had check number 2. And that was the in place equals true parameter that we were checking for. You saw that in the example earlier. Tim and I were working on putting this package on pip-i. And by 4 p.m., there it was. We had, our package, pandas-vet, on pip-i. It didn't have much to it at that point, but it was there and it was ready to go, ready to get improved, ready to iterate on. And by 4:30, Charles, this person who I told you did not have a lot of experience with Python or GitHub experience, made his first PR to an open source project. Right? So that's lesson 5. Face-to-face contact and conversations between learners and experienced Python folks is priceless. Sprints give learners a chance to participate in these real coding projects in person alongside more experienced people without the real pressure to produce something perfect. Okay, it can be very rough. And this is a very different dynamic than you're going to get, even if you're trying to contribute to open source. If you're just doing it through GitHub issues and pull requests only, it's a different dynamic. And submitting a PR to a person you've never met, I don't know if people do this, hopefully you try, but it can be a weird, kind of scary or anxious kind of process, even in the best of cases. So don't want to forget that face-to-face human conversation really can be useful. So what was an idea and a mostly empty GitHub repo at 9 a.m. on the day of the sprints was an ongoing open source project by 5 p.m. It was pip-installable, we had versioning tests, CI, contribution guidelines, kind of the whole works. And pandas-vet today has 15 different checks for pandas code. It's on Conda Forge now. It's been downloaded something like 5,000 times, I guess. And only 100 of those are me creating a new Conda environment because I screwed up my old one. Contributions are very welcome. We're very welcoming to something. We've had a couple of folks just kind of give us contributions from the blue, which is kind of crazy and awesome. So please be one of those people. And finally, I want to point out Charles, who I said was the least experienced of the group on the day of the sprints. Charles has contributed way more code to this project than anybody else. He's a main driver of what we're doing. He's a maintainer of the project. So that's kind of all part of the sprint, is what happened afterward. So let's revisit our lessons. Sprints offer a place to take chances. You should actively use your power to build this welcoming sprint environment. Sprints bring experts and learners together. Contributions don't have to be huge. And face-to-face conversation matters. And now I'll make a sort of pay-it-forward pledge. I want to kind of put my money where my mouth is. If you're organizing sprints, I want to help in whatever way I can, whether it's remotely in organizing, whatever I can do. Get in touch with me. I would love to help out. If you're participating in sprints and you need something to work on, pandas-vet is there. Please get in touch with me. I'd be happy to walk you through kind of the general basics to everything and how it works. And I want to take a second to give big thanks to the organizers of PyCascades, Thea Flowers and Alan Vizina, and especially to Timothy Crosley, who was kind of spearheading the sprints part of the PyCascades conference. And of course, to the original contributors. These folks are awesome. They kind of took a chance on my weird project idea. And I'm going to stop with one final lesson. Sprints are one honking good idea. Let's do more of those. Thanks.